Welcome back to the lecture series on 8085 microcontroller. In this video, we'll be discussing the various jump and call instructions of 8085 microprocessor. So, jump instruction means let's say you're executing a program in a very sequence. So you want to jump from this particular memory location, you want to break the sequence, and let's say you want to go to a new memory location somewhere over here and start executing from here. This is what jumping means. You are jumping from a particular memory location to a new memory location and start execution once again. So this is what a jump instruction means. Basically what you're doing is that your program counter PC is loaded with a new address of a new memory location from where you want to start your execution. You know, we have already discussed what is PC. PC is program counter. It stores the address of the next instruction that has to be fetched. So if you're running, definitely always we run programs in a sequence. So if you want to change the sequence, you want to branch to a new location, or you want to jump to a new memory location and start executing, you can use these jump instructions. So there are two types of jump instructions, which are unconditional jump instructions and conditional jump instructions. I hope you know what is the difference between unconditional and conditional. Unconditional means whether there is no condition that is being checked over here. You don't check any condition over here. The jump instruction is given as JMP 3600, whatever memory location you want to jump to, that memory location you can type over here with this instruction. The processor will definitely have to jump because there is no condition that is being specified, which means that it is an unconditional jump. Whenever the processor encounters this instruction JMP, it has to jump to the memory location that is specified adjacent to it. That is what unconditional jump means. And there are certain conditional jump instructions. Conditional jump instruction means it jumps only if the condition is satisfied. Let's say JC, jump if carry, which means that if the carry flag is set to 1, then it will jump, otherwise it won't jump. JNC means if the carry flag jump if no carry, which means that if the carry flag is 0, if the content of the carry flag is 0, only then it jumps. That is what conditional jump means. It depends upon the condition. Depending upon the condition that is specified, it will jump. Adjacent to JC also you can give a memory location or an address or a label, wherever you want to jump to. So there are like 8 conditional jumps depending upon each flags. Here we are checking the carry flag. JC stands for jump if carry. If carry flag is set to 1, then it will jump. If the carry flag is not set to 1, it doesn't jump. It will execute the next instruction in the sequence. Similarly, if jump if no carry means if carry flag is set to 0, then it will jump, and if carry flag is not set to 0, then it won't jump. If carry flag is 1, then it won't jump. Instead, it will execute the next instruction in the sequence. Then comes your 0 flag. Jump if 0. Jump if 0 means if the 0 flag is set to 1, which means that the previous result of the arithmetic instruction resulted in a 0, then it will jump. Jump if 0. Jump if 0 means if the previous instruction or the previous arithmetic instruction resulted in a 0, then your 0 flag will be set to 1, and if that is the case, then it will jump. If 0 flag is not set to 1, then it won't jump. Instead, it will go to the next instruction in the sequence. Then comes a very important instruction, that is JNZ, jump if not 0. So this instruction checks whether the 0 flag is 0. 0 flag is 0 means the previous instruction didn't result in a 0, and therefore the 0 flag is not set. And if the 0 flag is not set, then it will jump. This instruction is mainly used for making loops. We'll be discussing how to make loops very soon. Then we have 4 more conditional jumps. they are JPO, which means jump if parity odd. If the parity of the previous result is odd, then this jump operation will happen. Similarly, you have JPE, jump if parity even. These two checks the parity flag. Then comes your JP, which stands for jump if plus. If the previous result of the arithmetic instruction was positive, which means that it checks the sign flag. If sign flag was 0, it means the previous result was positive and it should jump. And if sign flag is 1, then it means that jump if minus. If sign flag is 1, it means that the previous result was negative, and it will jump to the new memory location. Now we have already discussed what is the problem with sign flag in 8085, so we won't be discussing it again. So that is a major issue, that sign flag can show a wrong result whenever there is a overflow. So we can't trust the sign flag in 8085 microprocessor. This problem is resolved in 8086. So that is one disadvantage of using the sign flag in 8085. So unconditional jump, we looked at two types of jump. One is unconditional jump, and then there is a conditional jump. Now we also said that we can make loops with these instructions. Now we all know what is a loop, right? A set of instructions which has to be executed again and again is called as a loop. So let's say you are writing a set of instructions. Let's say you have various instructions over here, and then let's say you give an instruction called JMP back as a label. Either you can give a label or you can also give an address. So let's say back is over here, back. So what happens here? Whenever these instructions get executed, when it reaches this point, there is an instruction called JMP back, which means that it will jump to this memory location back, and then again execute the same set of instructions. Again it will come to the back, again it will go to this memory location, comes back, it execute all the instructions, and then again it goes back to this instruction, again it reaches here, again it jumps back, which means that it forms a infinite loop, because there is no conditions that we have specified. It just has to go back. So this forms an infinite loop. If at all you want to make infinite loops in your program, then you can use such an instruction. By using JMP, unconditional jump, you can make infinite loop. This can also be used for branching to other memory locations that we have already seen over here, that we can branch to any other memory location using this unconditional jump. Now let's see how we can use J and Z instruction for making a normal loop, not an infinite loop but a normal loop. So let's say we have a set of instructions, right? Now always, if you want to make a loop, you definitely require a counter. So you'll have to use one counter. Any of the general purpose registers can be used as a counter. So let me take one register, MVI B register. Let me take this B register. Definitely we won't be taking A register, because A is the accumulator. Accumulator will be required for any of the arithmetic instructions or logical instructions. So we won't be taking the accumulator. Instead you can take any other register like B or C or D or E or H or L. Any of these registers can be used for as a counter. So MVI B, 0, 4. So which means that whatever is the number of times you want to run the loop, that will be the count that you will be giving into this register B. And then you can give a label. Label will indicate which are the instructions that you want to keep looping. let's say these instructions from here to here you want to keep looping, then you can give the label over here. Wherever you want to put the label you can put, depending upon which all instructions you want to keep looping. Don't put the MVI instruction inside the loop, because if you put MVI b comma 04 instruction inside the loop, or if you initialize the count for the counter inside the loop, it will keep initializing in each loop and your loop will never end. So that becomes an infinite loop again. So you should always specify, or you should always initialize your counter outside the loop so that you will get the exact number of looping. So the final instructions that you will have to give is that you will have to give decrement DCR B, and then you can give the instruction JNZ ABC. ABC is the label that we are given. So JNZ ABC. So decrement B will make this 4 to 3, and then in the next loop it will check the 0 flag. So JNZ will not check whether B is 0 or not, but it is going to check the 0 flag. What it checks is, it checks whether the 0 flag is set to 1. If the 0 flag is set to 1, then it will not jump, it will go to the next instruction till the 0 flag is set to 1. What happens? It will keep jumping back to this point. Again the loop will run, right? So JNZ instruction checks the 0 flag, not the register B. So always make sure that you give the DCR, the decrement operation on B or any register which is used as the counter at just before your JNZ instruction, because if you give this instruction somewhere here and if you do any other arithmetic instructions in between, that will update your 0 flag. Those arithmetic instructions that you give in between will update your 0 flag and you will get a wrong result. So if you want, definitely you want to get the results right. So always we have already mentioned that the flags gets updated with each and every arithmetic instruction. So you will always have to give the decrement operation just before your jump instruction, so that this decrement operation is going to affect the 0 flag, and depending upon the 0 flag this JNZ is going to work. So jump if not 0 to the label till the point B becomes 0, this will keep jumping back to ABC. So that is what happens here. You can also use any other registers as counter, like C or D or E or F, CD, BC, DE or HL, H or L register. So the same register you will be decrementing over here, and then you will be giving the instruction jump if not 0. Jump if not 0 means till the point this counter becomes 0, it will keep looping these instructions again and again. So that is how you use your conditional jump instructions. You can also use this JNC instruction whenever you want to add a carry. Let's say you are adding two 16-bit numbers, and let's say your result was 17-bit, so which means that there was a carry out from the 16th bit to the 17th bit. So you can use, in that case you can use jump if no carry, and with that instruction you can specify if there is no carry, you can jump to a new memory location. If there is a carry, then you can put some other registers to a particular value indicating that there was a carry, and you can get the exact result. So those instructions are also very simple. Once we start writing program, you will be able to understand them in a much better way. So those are the various jump instructions, and then now we will come to call and return instructions. Now call and return instructions are used for calling a subroutine. What is it called? Subroutine. So what is a subroutine? So it's the name itself suggests it's similar to a routine, something you do frequently, right? Something you do frequently is called as a subroutine. Routine is something that you do every day. Subroutine means something that you do frequently is called as a subroutine. So it's very similar to the functions that we write in C programming or C++ programming. So in the reason for using a subroutine is that, let's say you want to square a number and you keep squaring the number throughout the program, different numbers. So if you write the instructions for squaring like 10 times, let's say these are the 5 instructions for squaring a number, and if you want to write these instructions every time that you need to square a number, then the program becomes very huge. So it is the same instructions that you are going to write, only the number gets changed. So what we can do is that we can write these instructions once and we can keep calling these instructions whenever we require, which makes the program much smaller. So what happens is that in the main program you don't have to write the instructions for squaring or any such applications. Like you want to do certain set of instructions like multiple times in a program, then you can write it once and keep calling them n number of times. So that is the advantage of call instructions or subroutines. Subroutines are small set of instructions which can be called n number of times depending upon your program. That is what is a subroutine. So call and return instructions are the two instructions that we'll be using for calling a subroutine. So as let's say you are writing a program like this, you have a lot of instructions. Suddenly you want to call the subroutine, so you can give the instruction call 5400 or 7324, wherever you have written your subroutine. Let's say this is where you have written your subroutine 7324. So you can call this subroutine. What happens is that this call is a 3-byte instruction. Let's say your program counter was at 3320 at this point. So what happens is that the call instruction is a 3-byte instruction. 3320 is for the opcode for the call, and these two bytes are the address to which it has to go. So these 2 bytes will also be stored in the memory as 2 bytes of address and 1 byte of opcode. So basically you will have 3320 for the opcode of call, and then 3321 and 3322 will be for this addresses. So before the execution of the call instruction, the moment it has been fetched and it is about to be executed, we already discussed this in the first architecture video, that program counter will already be having the address of the next instruction, which is 3323. We are assuming these addresses. So the first address is assumed. If the first address is 3320, then definitely program counter will be at 3323 before the execution of this instruction call 7324. So 7324 is the address of the subroutine that you have written. So what happens is that the program counter will be having the address of the next instruction that has to be executed, which is 3323, and the moment the call instruction is fetched and it is executed, what happens is that this address, the new address 7324, will be put to will be initialized to your program counter, so that the program counter can start fetching instructions from these memory locations. So before that, like after the execution of the subroutine, you have to come back to the main program, right? And where do you want to come back? The point at which you made your call instructions, right? The call instructions were made at 3320 and you want to come back to 3323. So if you want to come back to this memory location 3323, which is the next instruction in the main program, then you will have to store this memory location at some point. So the first thing when a call instruction is called is the first thing that the microprocessor does is that the program counter is pushed to the top of the stack, to the top of the stack. Now there is a very interesting reason why it is pushed to the top of the stack. We'll be discussing that. So that is the first step that the microprocessor does when a call instruction is encountered. It pushes the address of the next instruction. Obviously program counter will be having the address of the next instruction. We have already discussed it in the previous lectures. Before the execution of the current instruction itself, the program counter will be having the address of the next instruction. So the next address of the next instruction in the main program will be pushed onto the top of the stack so that it can pop it out whenever it is required to. So pushing means putting the data onto the top of the stack. Popping means taking out the data from the top of the stack. Two operations. So for the first thing that the microprocessor does is pushing of the address, or pushing of the address that is there in the program counter to the top of the stack. Then the new address of the subroutine, which is 7324, this address will be put into the program counter so that the program counter can start executing from these address memory locations. All the instructions which are written in this subroutine will get executed, and finally you will have to write a return instruction. A return instruction is for returning to the main program. Now with return you won't be giving any address, because the return instruction will directly do what? It will pop the address that you have pushed onto the top of the stack. So pop the address to PC. So whatever address that you have pushed onto the top of the stack, let's say your stack is like this. So stack pointer points to the top of the stack, and whenever you push the address, what happens? 33 gets pushed onto the top of the stack. Then you have 23 that is which gets pushed. Now the stack pointer is pointing to this memory location, and when you pop, the same address comes back to the program counter and it will start executing from the same memory location when a return instruction is encountered by the microprocessor. Another advantage of using stack is that you can have multiple subroutines within this program. Let's say you have a main program, right? You have a main program, and then you have a call instruction, and then you go into a new subroutine, right? And here you encounter another call instruction. So then this is like nested subroutine. Again, let's say you encounter another call instruction, so it goes into another subroutine. Again, let's say you encounter one more call instruction, so it goes into another subroutine, right? So each time a call instruction is encountered, what happens? The PC is pushed onto the top of the stack and the new address is loaded into PC. Again, there is a call instruction, again PC is pushed onto the top of the stack. So what happens? The PC gets pushed over here, again the PC gets pushed over here, again the PC gets pushed over here, PC gets pushed over here onto the top of the stack. Now finally here you will get PC gets pushed onto the top of the stack. Now the last subroutine, when it ends, you encounter a return instruction. Where do you want to return to? Do you want to return to the main program, or do you want to return to the previous subroutine? Definitely you want to return to the previous subroutine. So that is the address that you pushed last to the top of the stack. So you can keep popping from the top of the stack, you will get the last pushed address, and therefore you can jump back to the previous subroutine. and again you can go and finish the previous subroutine. Again, the moment you encounter the return instruction, what happens? You will jump back to the previous subroutine. Again you will have a return instruction in the subroutine. Again you will jump back to the previous subroutine, and finally you have the return instruction and you jump back to the main program and execute the rest of the program, right? So this is the advantage of using the stack. Whenever the PC is pushed, it gets pushed onto the top of the stack, and stack pointer will be pointing to the top of the stack. So stack functions in the form last in first out. The last in program and the address is from this subroutine, right? So whenever a return instruction is encountered, it will jump back to the previous subroutine address which you have pushed. So in this way you can do get nested subroutines also. So that is the reason that we use stack for call instructions. With that, we end this video on call and return instructions and jump instructions. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you and have a nice day.